Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Yu Yu Hakusho. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I want to stress this saying, I thought it was a great season finale because I'm curious how people are going to feel about how drastically different this is and what it potentially could mean for the future. I just want to stress that enough to be like, if you didn't think it, you didn't like it, you didn't think it was great, that's perfectly fine. Just don't jump down my throat just because of my own personal opinion. But either way, like I said, there are a lot of interesting developments in this, and I'm curious to see how people fans of the manga and anime, because I don't know, I'd assume the anime for the most part is a pretty true adaptation of the manga. I don't know how much of that was of what I've seen, I don't know how much is filler and how much is just straight up from the manga. But either way, I'm curious if fans of the manga or the anime, how they're going to feel about this season finale. But either way, we're immediately picking up in the aftermath of last episode. Yusuke's going up against Toguro as Sakyo has opened up the wormhole that will connect the demon world and the human world. And those round worms are coming out, and they would obviously go around possessing people, turning them into yokai, blending both worlds, because he doesn't really explain himself other than, right, I think it's the rich and powerful thing of, hey, this world, I've seen all that it's capable of. I want this world is so small, I want a bigger world, the world to go back to what it was before the human world and the demon world separated. So that's all he wants to be able to see, because you're rich and powerful, you've seen it all, you've experienced all in the world, you want more. You've grown bored of this world and you want to see what it's really full of. So Yusuke's going up against the younger brother Toguro, while Kuwabara ends up going up against the older brother. And during the fight, this is where I was curious to see, all right, so how they're going to handle the Kuwabara situation. And it seems like we're skipping over the whole thing with his spirit sword. So this is the thing I was kind of referencing last episode, where I was curious whether or not they were going to adapt that or not. Because initially, Kuwabara still he keeps a piece of a wooden sword. He keeps it as a fundamental, he kind of treats it more like a lightsaber, he needs a handle to summon the spirit sword around. That's kind of up until the Dark Tournament, that's when during training, Kuwabara learns how to just summon it. He doesn't need an object anymore. I think there's special circumstances later on that gives him a different blade, because he uses a specific hilt that gives him a different blade, but I think that's quite later on in the series, if I remember correctly. But yeah, for the most part, they just skipped over that, and it's no, he's able to just summon up the spirit. So, because I was thinking he was going to take the pipe and maybe a fraction of the pipe and then summon, but it's no, that's where I was curious. I'm okay, so how do you, nope, they just skipped over it, and now he can just summon the spirit sword in his hands. He doesn't need something to kind of focus his energy around. He doesn't need an object to kind of be the base of the sword. So that was interesting. But obviously, problem is the older brother is pretty durable. Slicing and dicing still ain't enough. So him, Keiko, and Yukina are running for their lives. At the same time, Yusuke's going up against Toguro. Still kind of... Yusuke can't really even get off one of his spirit gun shots, and the fact is it's just fist to fist, but it's Toguro's too strong for him. I love that moment where he's just he kind of tackles Toguro and tries to impale him on the wall, and he's whoa, that was actually, you got pretty good aim, but kind of no cigars at least. He was tossing Yusuke around like nothing. It's just once again, I love I keep going back to it all the time. I love the choreography of this, but just him leaping up a lot and just punching Toguro and just kind of doing nothing. But luckily, Kurama and Hiei show up. Obviously, they're pretty banged up from their fight, so they're coming into this pretty ragged as well. If I remember correctly, I think all four, obviously Kuwabara eventually shows up, but if I remember correctly, all four of them fight Toguro together, if I remember correctly. I don't think it's just Kuwabara and Yusuke, but I could be misremembering. It's interesting too, because someone led Kuwabara to them, and even Sakyo was kind of almost wait, what's going on? I don't know if that was Botan helping out in that regard, or whether that was just Sakyo doing all right, I'll help you out. Maybe because him and Kuiman had made a deal. It's cool. If Yusuke wins, I will stop and close the portal because Koema put up a barrier to stop it, but it's not going to hold forever. So he's like, right, I will shut down the machine and stop all of this. But if Toguro wins, you kind of have to drop your barrier. But it's also like, right, let's up the ante. Like, yes, you're saying that I'm someone who will never stop and who wants to stop me from doing this in the future. I will bet my life on this bet. So he was so sure that Toguro was going to win. Because initially he was like, I actually wanted Toguro to lose this fight just so I'd have more money. Because the whole point was like to get all that money from everyone else to kind of fund stuff even more. But obviously with everything going on, it changed things. Well, most of the people ran. We never saw what happened to Tarakune, but you're kind of assuming like that yokai that Keiko, Kuwabara, and Yukina were running from earlier ended up probably ripping him to shreds. So it's kind of like little cosmic payback for what he did to Yukina. All that money and wealth don't mean anything when you're in the belly of a yokai, so. But yeah, you have our trio doing everything they can in this fight to try and of Hiei, Kurama, and Yusuke, and just trying to do everything they can. But it's like I love Kurama utilizing the whip in that way, where it's like at one point Hiei's about to get hit, he whips him just to kind of drag him out of the way. The three of them actually work really well together, even though Hiei's like, right, I'm not doing this for you, I'm not cooperating. And it's just like, God, why you have to be such a stubborn asshole, Hiei? I mean, granted, it's you, so of course you're going to be like that. But either way, I love the move that Yusuke uses, where basically I thought was pretty dope, where he because the others were grabbing onto Toguro, like holding onto his leg and his arm. Yusuke breaks free and ends up using a spirit gun to like bounce himself backwards to push Toguro, ends up impaling him on that piece of metal, and then spirit guns him one more time. I thought that was dope. It's actually interesting. This is one of those major differences, but this actually kind of plays a little bit into the anime. I'd assume it's the same in the manga, but that tactic somewhat is actually how Yusuke and them beat Toguro in the anime. Basically, Yusuke fires a spirit gun at Kuwabara's back and it gives him propulsion, and he basically full speeds ahead with his spirit sword in hand, stabs Toguro at like max speed with the help of the spirit gun, like propelling him. So it kind of reminded me a little bit of that when I saw that to some extent. But yeah, despite all that, Toguro still gets up. Like, yeah, the wound heals. Well, I think it's kind of interesting if you notice, it's not like the wound healed entirely. It's still, he has like a scar from it. And so it still did enough damage to leave a mark. But yeah, now he's going at them with, still not with everything, but it's still not enough for any of them beat him. So Kuwabara luckily shows up and kind of lends a hand, and obviously the older brother shows up and tells them, gives us a little backstory about obviously Toguro originally being human. Seems the same thing was, you would assume the same thing applies to the older brother as well, because he says like, right, you're not the only one who sold your soul. So they both sold their souls. They were both training together. They were friends. I do feel like it was kind of implied in this, but also vaguely from the anime. Maybe the anime leans into it more, but like it does seem like it wasn't just a friendship, that it was more like a Yusuke and Kiko situation. But he kept himself young while Genkai got older, and eventually the older Toguro is like, oh yeah, my brother ended up killing Genkai. And for Kuwabara and Yusuke, it's like, wait, she's gone. And that fuels them, especially in Kuwabara's case, but he still gets his ass handed to him. It's sad because Kuwabara doesn't get his shine to fully shine. He gets it a little bit, but this ends up being like Yusuke's time to shine. So he activates the Spirit Wave and like starts kind of like going a little Iron Fist. If I had to compare it to anything, it's just what immediately comes to my mind with the energy around his fist. Kind of pulling out all the moves and all the stuff. Like that final move was so dope, where he's just like, he knees him in the face with the energy around it, steps on his shoulder, jumps up, twists, and like punches his head and impales him into the ground. I was like, ooh, I love that move. But Toguro was like, yeah, that's not where this is ending. And he goes 100%. And none of them can do anything against him in this situation. So because Togoro's trying to push Yusuke to unlock everything. He's like, all right, you're finally the first person that's ever made me go all out. So I need you to fight at your full power. And the only way I'm going to do that is maybe I need to motivate you. And he plans on, hurting others. It's like, do I have to hurt them? Do I have to kill all of them to push you? Because we found out about Togoro's situation was a lot of his students that he was training were murdered. That's what the opening we got to the episode. That was Toguro watching this demon kill all of his students. And eventually, the way he talks about it later, he did get his... Well, Genkai says, like, oh, you got your revenge. So I'm assuming after he powered up, he eventually tracked down that demon and killed it. But he just kept going the entire time, getting stronger and stronger. So he's trying to force Yusuke's hand. Because I feel like I remember that technique where he, like pinches his, like, thumb and, like, he's basically, like, flicking his finger. He's able to send out, like, a sonic bullet. I do feel like... This is where I kind of talk about, like, I think they blended this arc and elements of the Dark Tournament arc all in one. So, but either way, he tries to go after Keiko and Yukina to motivate Yusuke, but Kuwabara gets in the way and he punches Kuwabara, and this sets Yusuke into a rage. Because for Yusuke, it's like, no, like, I'm angry, but it's more than just being angry at you. I'm mad at myself because he had made a promise to protect everyone to his master, and that's what he plans on doing. Because hearing about her death had motivated him before, but it's like, no, I've got to do this to protect everyone I care about. It was even this beautiful moment of just like Yusuke standing there, because I saw this shot in particular when it's kind of sandy around him, like because his spirit energy is drawing in so much. I was like, it kind of. I saw that moment in a trailer. I didn't realize what it was going to be in the context of the show. But it was like everything kind of slowed down for a moment where Toguro was like falling back from a punch from Yusuke. And it ended up like he was floating there for a second. I was wondering if time had completely frozen. But I guess it's like maybe just everything was kind of going slow. And just with all the energy Yusuke was gathering. And he's like, fine, good, let go of everything. You don't need it. But for Yusuke, it's like, no, I made a promise to Genkai that I would never be like you. Throwing away everything doesn't make you strong. That's weakness of the heart, like Genkai has said. And so he was going to like hold on to everything and protect everyone, and like he promised. And he pulls off the biggest spirit gun he did in comparison to like he did with Genkai. And for the first time in the series, while he's firing it, he actually said, because they've called it the spirit gun before, but he doesn't do the Luffy of calling out techniques. They don't really do that in this either, so very much in the One Piece vein. But this is and I guess you save it for this monumentous moment of he fires his spirit gun and Toguro like grabs onto it. I was like, yeah, it kind of reminds me of like, I was like, once again, other anime feels, it's kind of like, oh, it feels a little like DBZ Cell's Kamehameha versus the father-son Kamehameha of Goku and Gohan. It kind of felt a little like that. I guess you could also compare it to like, anytime the Rasengan got used against anyone, because I keep making a comparison to the Rasengan because of its design. I guess also you can think on a DBZ level like the Spirit Bomb, especially like against Kid Buu. I kind of was reminiscent of that. So I was like, okay, so he's just going to straight up die. But then like he held it off. I was like, whoa. But then he dies from his wounds because it's like, right, he was able to kind of like take the shot, but it still was too much. Because he wasn't trying to dodge it or anything. He took it on the chin because for him, it's like he was looking for someone strong enough to finally stop him. And it felt poetic that out of anyone, it would be Genkai's student. That would be his undoing. And it's like, thank you, Yusuke, for being the opponent to put me down. And Toguro dies. I was like, oh. I was like, wait, are we doing what they did in the anime? And I'm like, no. Some stuff later on, I'm like, oh, he's dead. Because that's what because I know... I brought this up previously because, like I said, my memory is god-awful of some of the later arcs. But I was like, I could have sworn that Toguro shows up later. Not even just a Dark Tournament. I feel like, but I might be conflating, because I know there's another series I might be conflating where, like, a villain seemed like he died. And there's so many stories, so I'm able... It's vague enough that it could apply to any story. But, like, there was a particular villain that seemed like he died, but he pops up later on and you never really get a full explanation for. Like, I could have sworn Toguro did a similar thing, but maybe I'm misremembering. like I said, even past the Dark Tournament, because I know it's like, oh, he's dead this time. Because in the anime, this is once again another drastic difference. Even when Kuwabara stabs him, like I brought up earlier, how they beat him, Kuwabara doesn't kill him. They think he's dead, but then he pops back up like after they leave, and it's like, yeah, he's actually still alive, and they face him for real during the tournament arc, during the Dark Tournament. So that's where I was saying like it feels like they're combining the two, because that's where he goes down. If I remember, isn't that how Yusuke actually beats him? Doesn't he unleash like a powerful blast, and doesn't it blow away like 80% of like his entire like top torso is blown away? Maybe that's part of the fight, and then he regenerates, or maybe it's all of the fight and that's how it ends. But because I remember like the tournament arena got massively destroyed during their fight, but I don't fully remember how it all went down. But Yusuke ended it. Luckily, Kuwabara's still alive. Because I was about to say, Yukina's there to heal him. But, it's like, oh, maybe he's dead. But it's like, nope. Luckily, he's still alive. They're able to heal him. And he's so happy to be healed by Yukina. It's like, oh, thank you. He's like, right. I'm sorry that humans are so terrible. Because he had such a low opinion of demons and yokai. Obviously, he learned not all of them are so bad because of Kurama. But, obviously he was coming at that from what happened to his buddy in episode 1 from getting burned by the guy that was possessed. But it's like, yeah, not all demons are bad, but he's also like, yeah, not all humans are good. Like, humans are terrible people who've done terrible things to you. So he's like, I hope you don't hate all of us. And for her, she's like, no, I like you guys, because she looks at Yusuke and Keiko, because she has a friend now. And I think her saying that, he was almost like huh? And he turns over, he's like, ooh, and she's like, no, are you okay? It's like, no, he was getting all gushy about it, because he was probably like, all he heard was, I like you guys. It's just all he probably heard was, I like you. That's all he probably heard. And he was so excited. You fucking dweeb. But Hiei and Kurama, he ends up giving Kurama the knife. He says, yeah, do whatever you want to. His sister's safe. And it's like, that's all I need. And then they had that look and that exchange with each other. I'm like, Hiei's not going over to her. I was like, wait, I was like, she doesn't know that I was like, is that what that is? And then later on, it's like, yeah, she doesn't know that Hiei's her brother, because it's like, right, my long lost brother, and he doesn't tell her. It's just like, he hands her the thing, and she's like, oh my god, are you? He's like, no, don't get it wrong, I'm not your brother, that's not who I am. She's like, then who are you? He's like, just a friend of those guys, that's all it is. So I think she probably knows on some level he might be, but he doesn't want to admit it, and she's kind of okay with that. She's not going to push him on it. Well, because Kuwabara still doesn't know that that's, I don't think he knows that I still don't think he knows that that's Hiei's sister. So the only people who know is Kurama and Yusuke. No one else. Keiko doesn't even know. So it's like, none of them don't. So Keiko and Kuwabara are in the dark. Sakyo ends up, keeping up his end of the bargain, ends up killing himself. Like I said, this one, I'm like, I don't know if that's a character that exists solely for this TV show, or was he a character from the anime and the manga, and his story's just playing out different? I mean, maybe the end result's the same of like he dies, but maybe it's different circumstances. I don't remember that character at all. I remember Toguro, the brothers, when I saw them in a teaser, but I was like, I did not remember him at all, so. But we did have this beautiful moment with Toguro and Genkai, because Toguro decided to kind of go through the harshest hell possible. I guess it's like, I mean, I assume there's only one hell, but I guess it's almost like the 9 layers, the 9, what is it? With Dante's Inferno, what is it? The 9 circles of hell. I could not remember it for the life of me. Like maybe he's choosing like, because like the lower you go, the worse things get. Like that's like the lower you get into hell, that's where the more despicable people go. Like the different branches. So the deeper you go into the 9 circles, the worse it gets. So I guess it's kind of a thing of he's taking the road to the 9th circle of hell, if that's kind of where they're pulling from. But Genkai's like, right, why did you because he's basically, as Botan and Koema were talking about, he's like, right, he was just punishing himself. It wasn't really like looking to be. He wanted kind of an escape from his pain, and just it wasn't just about getting stronger. It was about torturing himself to kind of live. Because he was an honorable dude. Because even with it all said and done, he ended up smashing his older brother, because he's like, right, I have my honor in the way I handle things. So he didn't appreciate the way his brother was handling things, and just kind of gave him like the good old punch, and just sent him like obliterate part of his body, and sent part of it just like crashing through part of the caverns of the place. But he talks to Genkai about this is kind of what he deserves, because she's like, haven't you suffered enough? But he's like, no, this is kind of what I deserve. And if they're not careful, Koima is like, tell him he needs to be on the lookout for Yusuke. Like, he will grow stronger, but you want to make sure he doesn't end up like me, get so consumed with that power and get lost in it, and kind of continues on his path. For Genkai, it's just like right up until the very end, you just continue to be a fool. Like, you're not being honest about everything. And like, it's sad the way things played out, but it's kind of like, yeah, like I guess I forgot how the rules of death work in this. I mean, obviously Yusuke could come back, but like Toguro's situation, like he could, I guess, always get pulled out of hell to come back. Maybe the same thing for Genkai in the spirit world. So I don't know. I don't know if she necessarily moves on to heaven. That also touches on something I think I talked about before, but didn't really go into. We got it a little bit. I think this was more so just to kind of reflect their past and stuff, so that she looked more like how she used to, because he also didn't want to see her face when she was older. It's just a reminder of the past, of his failings. But in that moment, she turned into her young self again. That was a thing that was part of Genkai's thing of like, by focusing her energy, she could make herself young again. That's how she hid herself in the dark tournament, by making herself young again. But it's like, it takes energy to do that too. So once she runs out of energy, she goes back. But this was also something I was trying to remember, because I kept being like, because I know Genkai didn't die, but that's why I kept being like, there's no way she's actually dead, and it seems like they're sticking with that. So that's why I'm like, I don't remember how the rules of death apply. Could she come back or not? I don't think so, because it's special circumstances that brought Yusuke back. But I was trying to remember, because he also died before he was supposed to, so on and so forth, right? Maybe the same thing still applies in Genkai, so maybe she could, like I said, I don't remember how the rules of death how they handled that. Like, would they even bring her back, or if that would be kind of crossing the line? But I was vaguely remembering, I was like, doesn't Toguro actually kill her in the Dark Tournament? I don't remember if she actually dies or not. I feel like I have a memory of like her being like severely hurt, and I remember like Yu Hakusho would do this thing where like the screen would go completely white instead of the character it's almost like you see the outline of the character in black, like their detailed outline, but it's not colored in, and the entire background is white, and you see like a shaded version of the character design, but it's not colored in. I feel like I have a vague memory of that, where it feels like you see a version of Genkai like designed like that when she dies. So that's why I'm like, I feel like I remember her not only being injured, but actually dying to Toguro during the Dark Tournament, but I don't actually remember. Also, speaking about the rules, Koima and Botan like interfere a little bit, but not directly, because the show doesn't cover it. But I feel like I have some vague memory. Once again, this could be just me pulling from something else. But I swear, I feel like there's a rule where they can't interfere too much on the human level. Like, yeah, these are yokai, but that still involves more. That's why you have a spirit detective get involved. That's why you need a spirit detective, because you can't. They as people in the spirit world, beings of the spirit world directly can't interfere with anything. Like, obviously, you can interfere with the demon horde that's coming out the hole, because, like, right, that's endangering the world. So, like, he's allowed to overstep. He's able to step in then, but he can't directly interfere in this. Like, at no point did he actually directly help try to fight with Yusuke. But I think that's because they're forbidden to. Once again, the show doesn't go into it, but I feel like, once again, that little scratch in the back of my head being like, I think that was a rule in the anime, but it could also just be like I said, I could just be completely making that up. That could be a complete and utter horseshit. Do let me know in the comments down below. But, yeah, everything is resolved. Our group ends up leaving. Obviously, Keiko is happy, because it's like, oh, not only am I finding out about yokai, I also knew that you would survive. I also have a yokai friend, which we have Kuwabara and her talking. I love Hiei being like, yeah, don't talk to her, you'll sully her. And he's starting all kinds of shit with Hiei. So for Keiko, it's like, yeah, it all worked out in the end. And, she's thankful that Yusuke came and kept his promise to protect her. And Yusuke yells out to his master, he kept his promise. So that's the end of it. We get the little tease at the end, like the older brother might still be alive, but I guess there's not enough of him left to like fully regenerate, or I don't know. Once again, in the anime, him and his brother are not dead. Like both of them survived this situation, and they end up having to face off against them in the dark tournament. So I when I googled whether or not the show was going to get a second season, it is self-contained enough to be like, yeah, it's its own thing. To be fair, the series is like that too. Like, well, to be fair, this arc sets up like, no, he's actually still alive. So, but it's also, a dark tournament arc. I don't think it ended with any setup. I think it was just kind of like, yep, this is concluded, and you move on to the next arc. So, yes, this arc in particular could be. So they're not doing the dark tournament arc. I mean, they still could. I guess you just put a different villain there, or most likely, what you do is you pick up the arc. There's still a few more arcs you could adapt. There's at least, like I said, there's one or two arcs I have in the back of my mind. It's like there's the final arc, which, if I'm not mistaken, was a tournament. I distinctly remember it being a tournament arc itself. But there was also, as I brought up, the whole thing about Yusuke's predecessor. I remember that being an arc. I cut it out of the review. It was one of the I think I talked about it in episode 1, but I cut it out because I didn't want to talk about it. But considering this went such a drastically different way, if I remember correctly, there's one of Yusuke's later cases involves him going up against a former spirit detective. I don't remember if it's the guy that preceded him or just a former spirit detective in general ends up being the main antagonist of an arc. So like that could easily be adapted and set it up to be, whether it's the person that preceded Yusuke, whether that really is that character in both the manga and anime, that also depends on if that was a filler arc or not too. But it is self-contained, so they could end things here right now. The show's only been out for, it came out yesterday at the time of me recording. It's Friday. So it'll probably take a little while. But it is self-contained enough that they could end this here. But like I said, there are other things they could pull. It's just, I saw something, like I said, I'm so curious to see how people feel about it. Because it's like, yeah, you most likely won't do the dark tournament arc. If anything, you probably would create original stories for this. But like I said, I don't remember enough of the anime to remember, like, other than the Spirit Detective arc and the former Spirit Detective arc, as well as the final arc. Other than them, I don't remember anything past the dark tournament. I don't think the former Spirit Detective arc, I don't think that was the next arc after the dark tournament. It could have been, but I don't actually remember how many arcs Yu Yu Hakusho has. I mean, it can't be too many because the anime only has like 112 episodes I saw, which obviously it's like, oh, that seems, I mean, in anime terms, for a long running like shonen anime, it's not that wild. I mean, because the manga ran for like 4 years, if I'm not mistaken, so it's not like it's really that long either. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't remember enough Yu Yu Hakusho to pull from it, but it's like, yeah, they could always continue. Like, he just moves on to the next case, but it is self-contained enough. But like I said, I feel like, with the exception of the Toguro stuff, like, most of this arc would have been anyway. But that's, once again, that's set up for the Dark Tournament arc. But because Toguro is dead, because like I said, I think maybe they thought like, hey, we might not get a season 2, so let's kind of shift things up and change it. Once again, adaptations, people are going to be upset with that. It's like, it's the thing of either you're too faithful or you're not faithful enough. Like that middle ground, you always have to strike this perfect middle ground of, you can change things up, but just be true to the story. So this is one of those things of like, it was still true to the story, just play things differently. When about, like I said, the Genkai thing and the Toguro of it all. So I don't know. These are just my thoughts. I'm curious how people feel about it. Do let me know, like, some of the stuff I was unsure about in the comments down below. Let me know if you're, like, have a lot more clearer memory of Yu Yu Hakusho. Maybe you've watched it recently or read it recently to kind of be able to compare and contrast it a lot better than I have. Obviously, because my memory is god-awful and I'm an idiot. So, but, I mean, I'd be excited to see more Yu Yu Hakusho. I really like this live-action adaptation. I'd love to see more in whatever capacity that might be. Like I said, it's only been a couple days, so it's only been like a day, so I don't know if I'm putting this up tomorrow or whether I'm going to wait till Sunday. We'll just see how things shake out when it comes to... I've got the first episode already edited. I just haven't edited the other... No, I've already edited the audio for episodes 2 and 3. I just have to get some screenshots and stuff and finish editing them, but like... So, I don't know, that's a me thing, but... We'll have to keep an eye out and see whether or not there's going to be more to this or not. But I'd love more. But I'm also in a situation where, like, if they decide to end this here, I'd be perfectly fine with that. Because it kind of puts you in a situation where it's like, well, I guess you don't have to worry too much of, like, you told the story you needed to tell. So if you don't get another season, you're kind of okay. But I think the story being what it is, kind of, it perfectly fits for things to be like promptly wrapped up in a tight little bow. Maybe I'm just not remembering like some of the other arcs correctly. 'Cause I feel like they just end, like I said, with the exception of Chogoro stuff, because that sets up the Dark Tournament. But I feel like none of the other arcs did that, but maybe they did. And like I said, I didn't watch a lot of some of the later stuff, so I missed out on quite a bit story beat wise. So. But yeah, I think I've run my mouth off long enough. That's really all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.